Hey, Ricky, welcome to the NTM Growth Marketing Podcast. It's an honor to be speaking with you today.
Great to be here, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
What caught my attention so much as I reached out to you and as I was doing some prep for this conversation is you're merging two worlds I find very fascinating, which is Web3, crypto, and marketing. And the reason I ignored this space for the longest time was because it was way too complicated for me. So just to start off today, I'd love to hear about, why does this challenge get you out of bed every morning?
Yeah, I think it starts it starts with one of the most fundamental things about marketing, I think, which is really good marketing is education. It involves teaching in some capacity about whether it's a product or an organization or whatever it is, kind of getting to the essence of why something is interesting, why it's important. I know it's something that No Typical Moments really stresses a lot in your work. And so when it comes to the field of crypto, what gets me up is that I think you'd be hard pressed to find a field where education is more needed than in crypto, because it's a complex field. It has a lot of nuance. It has a lot of misunderstandings. There have been a lot of bad actors. There's a ton of potential. There's a lot of good actors. And so really the job of a crypto focused firm, your first job is to understand what are the questions that people have about crypto, and how can you go about answering those in a way that honors what is important to them and does so in a way that's honest and authentic and clear. And so that was one of the things that really attracted me to the firm I'm at now, Bitwise. The company, part of the mission is helping investors understand the space and being very generous in sharing insights with professional investors and others about kind of what makes crypto tick, why does it matter, what are some of the misconceptions about it. So yeah, to me, great challenge, and a great testament to why marketing matters is that at the end of the day, I think good marketing helps people learn. It helps people have a better understanding, not simply of a particular product, but kind of how that product fits into their lives, into the economy, into the world around them. So yeah, that's one of the great joys of the job.
And what's your role at the organization?
Yeah, so my role is I lead our creative team and our content marketing team. And basically what that means is a lot of our work, as I mentioned, involves helping people understand what crypto is. And so the job, I'm within the marketing department. And so my job is to work with our research team, who are developing a lot of the insights and breaking new ground in terms of what the data says about crypto. Working with our sales team to understand what are people concerned about, what are the questions people have, and then working within the marketing team to make sure that our messages are coordinated. But the purpose is to take all of that and figure out how do we package that in a way that is creative, that adds something new, that helps people understand it in a way that's not only clear but enjoyable, that gets at the essence of who our company is. And so yeah, my role is helping develop everything from the white papers we release to our 2-pagers to our video content, helping support our events team in the work they're doing, and helping establish our content strategy, our media strategy. So yeah, it's a dynamic field, and there's no shortage of ways to make an impact.
Were you involved in marketing finance related products in the past? Were all your jobs, marketing in the crypto world? What were some of your prior marketing experiences like?
Yeah. So I interestingly, I started actually on the journalism side of things. So I went to journalism school and set out to be a journalist, and learned the craft and how you do sound research, how you write about things in a really clear way. And then about 15 years ago, I pivoted from journalism to working for a financial firm, to begin with, it was doing their writing. So this was a wealth management firm in New York, and it was just a lot of it was education. So explaining things like, what is a trust, and what is asset allocation, and what are some of the things that are moving markets, and so to begin with, it was purely writing, and then about 12 years ago, it became clear that the video side of the space was an area that was increasingly important to a lot of our clients, and so I helped to build the video capabilities at the firm, kind of the in-house studio there, and then spent the better part of a decade telling stories through both the written word and also through film. So that was all in the financial area, and then it was about 2 years ago that I first became aware of this opportunity at Bitwise. The firm was growing quickly, and maybe as a quick bit of background, Bitwise is it's a crypto asset manager, so it sits at the intersection of crypto and the financial world. And they said a big part of what they were doing was focused on helping people understand crypto, but speaking to an audience that was primarily financial professionals. So in that sense, my background fit well, and I was really excited for the opportunity, and the company's really dynamic, and so that's what prompted the pivot to leading the creative and content marketing team at Bitwise.
I'm going to give you my answer to this question, and then I'm going to throw it back to you to see your answer. So the question is, what do you think makes a good marketer? And my answer is adaptable. The reason I say that is, and I'm going to give kind of 3 different examples of marketers. So with No Typical Moments, we work with a lot of small businesses. My sister works in digital marketing for the Steelers. And when I think of, for us, it's about dollar in, or dollar out, dollar in, $1.50 in ideally. With my sister, I want to watch hype videos of Kenny Pickett getting ready for the 2023 season. It's not as transactional all the time. And for you, what I hear is a lot of education up front. And so in my mind, that's why I say adaptable, because you need to be able to meet the business where they're at and really what the best marketing plan would be. But in your own words, what would you say makes a good marketer?
Yeah, I think that's a really good insight. I think when I think of what makes a good marketer, I think of kind of two components, and the second of those, I think, speaks or your concept about adaptability is particularly applicable. The 2 components would be, I think the first thing is a good marketer has to be able to discover what the essence of an organization or a product is. So you have to be able to kind of dig and really find out, not just on a superficial level, but like really getting your hands dirty. What makes this company different? What makes this product different? And so it involves, I think, a lot of kind of original thinking and for lack of a better term, discovery. You're trying to get to the heart of what, the beating heart of an organization or a person or a product. And then once you have a really clear sense in your own mind, and the organization does, of kind of like the essence, then the next question is, how do you take that and package it in a way that is compelling? How do you share that with the rest of the world? And so that's where I think adaptability comes in, that you have to have a good understanding of the different mediums that are at your disposal. Is this particular message best suited right now for the written medium? Is it for press? Is it for the video medium? And I think you also have to be adaptable to market circumstances. And you have the essence, and you may have the medium, but all of a sudden market conditions change really quickly, and then you have to still, still holding the essence true. You have to say, okay, well, are there things that we should emphasize slightly differently to meet the audience where they are right now? And I think one maybe example of that I'm proud of is 2022 was just a crazy year for crypto, where the asset class in general was down 2/3. There was a lot of negative headlines. And so someone could have started the year and thought, all right, the role is simply to educate, show all the advantages. But halfway through the year, you had to be able to look out and read the room and see what are people feeling right now. What's the kind of the zeitgeist? And so one of the things we did is we said, okay, well, what's the thing that matters most right now to people, and how do we slightly pivot to accentuate that? And the thing that kept coming back to us was people need a trusted guide. And so
just to interject real quick, did you have to pivot rapidly again after FTX happened in November?
No, even before that, it was earlier in the year you had some other kind of they weren't of the scale of FTX, but you had Luna, for instance, had this big kind of implosion. You had some stable coins that didn't do well, and so a bunch of people were like, "Yikes, what is happening?" And so what our mission was is to say, right now in this moment, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of volatility going on. The way we can best serve our investors, and even more broadly than that, anyone who's interested in crypto, is by projecting trust and earning their trust, I should say. And so what we said is, a trusted guide in crypto has never mattered more. And we had a couple of paid campaigns that we shifted out some of the creative. We had to develop it somewhat quickly. And I think maybe importantly, in developing it too, this wasn't a departure from what we had kind of already held true. This was authentic to what Bitwise does and is, but it was a line that people needed to hear more there, that here in this environment, trust matters more than ever. It's the most important currency. That's why we exist, is to be a trusted partner and to form relationships with professional investors. And I think it resonated, and it was a kind of a testament to being able to pivot and be adaptable. So yeah, I think that's a really good point about what makes for a good marketer.
And how do you get to know your customers at Bitwise? So I say this because when I hear index funds, I think of someone who's doing index funds in the more traditional sense, and I'm thinking of a very conservative man or woman, and they're put it in, and 20 years from now they're going to see it have a compound interest with hopefully 8% returns year over year. But as a marketer, you don't want to make that assumption. So maybe it's similar but different type of person. And how do you go about discovering who your avatar is at Bitwise and really get into their head?
Yeah, it's a great question, and maybe a good starting point for that would be to offer a little bit more context for the types of people we serve and what our role is. So Bitwise is a crypto asset manager, and our mission is to help professional investors understand and access the opportunities in crypto. And so what that means is, in serving professional investors, that's primarily, think of financial advisors or RIAs, institutions, family offices. And so in one sense, our kind of immediate customer, our immediate client would be that professional investor space. But a really important part of understanding that is understanding the people that they're serving and how their businesses operate. So, people like you and me, we might not be managing money on our own, but maybe we have a financial advisor we're working with. And so we would route some of our questions to that advisor. And so, in order for us to be successful, we have to be able to understand what are professional investors facing right now, and what are the sorts of questions that they're being asked. How do they think about it? And there's a couple of ways we do this. I think probably the most fundamental is that when Bitwise was built, one of the areas of emphasis was on creating a sales consulting team that was nationwide, that was big enough that we could have individual conversations with a lot of those advisors every day. So, in some sense, that's the best way to really understand what are on advisors' minds, is you have kind of a team on the front lines that is meeting with them, hundreds, thousands of times a year, and asking them questions. What are you concerned about? What do you know about Bitcoin? What do you know about Ethereum? What sort of products are you interested in for your clients, or how does your practice work? So I'd say a huge portion of our insights when it comes to marketing come from just listening to the sales team, having that regular dialogue, and
And
having kind of a
clarify
feedback loop.
a
Yeah.
point. Why is it important to have those literal face-to-face or Zoom-to-Zoom conversations versus going to Chat GPT or Google to discover it?
It's a great point, and an increasingly important point. It's important because, I think at the heart of any relationship between a company and a product, a person often mediates that. So you can be attracted to a particular product that a company has, but the odds are that somewhere attached to that product is some sort of person that has referred you to the product, or someone has used the product, or there's somebody that you trust who has vouched for that product. And so as human beings, relationships are how we make sense of the world. It's how we develop trust. And so in many ways, you can go to Chat GPT and you can get information from Chat GPT, but it's going to always exist at a different level from the sort of information you're going to get that's as part of a broader relationship. And so I think that's one of the insights that the Bitwise leadership team had, was especially in a field that's as complex and new as crypto, having a person that you can talk to, and that you can read their face, you can hear their voice. Those sorts of things are difficult to quantify in a way that you could plug it into an AI model, but as a person, you can process that and do something with it and respond to it in a way that you couldn't otherwise. So I think it's a great question, and I think it all comes down to, at heart, human beings, we want information, but that information is going to be more valuable to us if it comes in the context of a relationship.
Do you have any initial thoughts of how you think ChatGPT is going to change marketing, or not change? I'm open to that as well, if you think it's gonna, be a fad and go away.
Yeah, it's such a good question, and I don't think it's a fad. I don't think it's going to go away. I think what Chat GPT will do is, in many ways, I think if you think of marketing, there's kind of gradations of how effective different marketing campaigns are, and how creative they are, and how original they feel. I think in the middle, you have a lot of marketing campaigns that kind of sound the same. They're kind of derivative. And you and I can probably relate to this, where you see some sort of ad, or you read some sort of paper, and you feel like you could just substitute one company's name for another.
Right.
And I think for that kind of superficial level of marketing, I think Chat GPT is going to cover a lot of that. I think there's going to be a lot of companies that could substitute insights from artificial intelligence to help with what they're doing. I still think that if you're going for depth of originality and really getting to the heart of an organization, that's something that human beings have an edge on artificial intelligence, in the sense that, and I think part of what that comes from is inputs. So AI, you can put a lot of inputs into AI, but there are some things that you cannot as easily put into AI, or you can't as quickly convert those to actionable knowledge. If you go into a meeting and you meet with 3 professional investors in a given week, and you sense that something is changing in the environment, you're going to be able to convey that much quicker and act on it and adapt to it quicker than if you were relying maybe on AI to generate some of those. So that's one thought, and I think the other is, there is some emphasis on like an either or, like, will jobs exist with AI, or are they coming for everyone's jobs? And I think what's going to happen increasingly is marketers are going to have to zone in on what are the things that AI can do for me better than I can do. So when it comes to some of that nuance I was referring to, I think relationships have an edge, but when it comes to gathering insights quickly, or culling information quickly that's publicly available, AI will be helpful there. But yeah, it's a thorny field. Yeah,
Are you playing around with it?
I have played around with Chat GPT a little bit, um, and there's a couple of kind of initial observations I'd have for it. One is there's like this instant euphoria that you get, like, oh my gosh, this thing is so powerful. I can spit out a limerick on the Federal Reserve in, in 8 seconds. And in one particular time, I'm like so excited about it. I'm using it, and I think one of the maybe concerns I have as someone in the creative field is that there's two components to creating a product or a service, and that is there's the work that goes into creating it, like the people that are involved and the thinking that is involved and the research that's involved, and then there's the product itself. And I think with AI, what we'll see is that the AI can produce some really good products, and we're going to be able to see products that we're like, wow, that is really, really good. But there's also a tremendous value to all of that, the process, the effort that goes into creating a product by human beings in a ways that's not easily quantifiable. So if I've written a limerick on my own, I have activated my brain in ways that is going to help me some way down the road. It's developing some sort of a skill. It's kind of inculcating the sense of empathy or imagination. And so I think one of my biggest concerns about AI is imagination is what drives, really good marketing, really good storytelling. And we might get products that convey, that kind of stimulate the imagination and have imagination embedded in them. But is there a cost in terms of how we as workers, how we're exercising our own imaginations and skills? So I think that's going to be a critical thing for us to weigh as a society, really, as companies, is what value are we ascribing to that effort that goes into making something versus just the end product itself?
I'll give another example that's on my mind. It's not necessarily marketing related. Maybe it's more customer service related. So I was at Men's Warehouse this past weekend getting my suit fitted for my wedding. And there was some issue of being able to ship it from Pittsburgh to San Diego. And my dad was really annoyed at the guy we were working with. And so he sensed that frustration about the manager, blah, blah, blah. And what helped to diffuse the tension in the moment between all of us is that he saw I was wearing Air Force Ones, which is a joke / I'm serious at the same time. And he started making, some jokes about the Air Force Ones and, why I had them and all these other things, as I don't look like someone who would be wearing Air Force Ones. And it was that kind of people connection and kind of that's where I'm drawing the commonality of a robot would not, I might be totally wrong in this, but I don't know how a robot is going to sense the room and the high intensity of the emotions, be able to look at my shoe and start a conversation to diffuse the tension in the moment between the three of us.
It's so true. And I think a lot of it boils down to that, that the kind of the universe of potential things you can do, the questions you can ask, the paths you can go down, that's something that that is not easily programmable. And so, look, AI is stunningly powerful, but I'm with you in the sense that I think some of those emotional nuances are the purview of human relationships in ways that are tough to replicate. I'm sure some AI experts would say, well, if you looked at Andrew's, the pace of his breathing and maybe there would be a way to do, but I kind of don't buy it. I think you're right that there's a power and really, frankly, a mystery to human relationships that's not is not easily captured by artificial intelligence.
As a marketer, why is storytelling important, and what story are you hoping to convey at Bitwise?
Yeah, the reason storytelling is so important is that as human beings, we're hardwired to love stories. It's in many ways a mystery why that's the case, but but if you want to really connect with somebody on an emotional level, not just delivering information, but actually get them to kind of step in your shoes, or to step in their shoes, there's something about the structure of a story that really works and has worked for millennia. And it comes down to, what's the heart of a story? It's conflict, it's mystery, it's an obstacle. And so, really at heart, what marketing should be doing is trying to identify what are the challenges, what are the problems, what are the mysteries, or the obstacles that a given team is helping to solve, or a given product is helping to solve. And so I think in some ways, like, marketing is like how an economy tells stories. And so yeah, being able to identify, here's a problem. There's something as human beings, when we identify a problem, we have this like itch to want to know, how is it going to get solved? And so if you can couch a given company or a given brand or a given product in that problem, then it's more compelling, it's more interesting, and you have people's kind of emotional attention in ways that you wouldn't otherwise.
And what is the story you want to tell at Bitwise?
Yeah, so the story that we want to tell at Bitwise is, if you start at the problem, right? The problem is, crypto can be really scary. It's scary for a lot of reasons. It's scary because if you go way back kind of to the origins, you think of imagery that people kind of conjure up when they think about crypto. In the early, 2013 to 2015 era, it was, the guy in a basement with a hoodie playing Dungeons and Dragons. It was kind of using this as an illicit, means of making money. And then kind of more recently, it was a lot of the stories attached to crypto were, it's kind of this funny money that is a get rich quick scheme, and you got a lot of people with Lamborghinis and instant billionaires that are, kind of creating tokens, and it's all nothing. And in the midst of that, what does that do? It creates this massive sense of distrust. I can't, are these people just selling me a bill of goods? Is there any real value to it? Do they care about, what I care about? I don't trust it. So you think that's the obstacle, that's the problem. And the story that we're seeking to tell at Bitwise is the dangers that are inherent in crypto, the bad actors that are inherent in it, have clouded the fact that this is a fascinating technology that's immensely powerful, that has the opportunity to really make our companies, the way that we validate things, the way we transact, all of that more efficient, more accessible. And you can move money at the speed of the internet. You can find new interesting ways of documenting and protecting ownership. And there's use cases for it. And so the key is, when you have that problem and you have this really powerful technology, there's a lot of sifting that has to happen. You have to figure out, who are the charlatans, who are the people that are out to make a quick buck, and who are the people that genuinely want to teach me and to walk through with me the benefits of really a groundbreaking generational technology. And so our story is, we exist to just do that, to help people understand it. And whether that person knows nothing about crypto and they're kind of embarrassed, to that person, we wanted to show them we're accessible. We can empathize with where you are at it, and there's no dumb questions. And likewise, we want to help people understand it, access it. So if you believe that crypto is, a great opportunity, the next question is, well, what's a smart avenue to get access to it? And 5 years ago, you may have had a small subset of people who saw the value in crypto, but even then it was difficult to access. You had to jump through all sorts of hoops. And so firms like Bitwise exist to say, let's take away some of the complexity and meet people where they are in terms of the best way to access crypto. We can walk you through why it's important, and then we can help you get access to it in a way that's most advantageous to you. So that's the Bitwise story, is let us help you as a guide, be a trusted guide through your crypto journey.
Without giving away, your marketing playbook for 2023, what channels are you invested in this year? And anything from, we're just rolling up our sleeves and going into our Rolodex of contacts to, hey, Discord, all these things that really the crypto space loves, Twitter.
Yeah. So in terms of our playbook, I'd say a lot of it is continuing some of the same things that we've been doing, in the 5+ years we've been around, which is number one, leaning very heavily on the meeting, that call, that individual one-on-one contact with professional investors. So that's continuing apace, and from that, we can glean a lot of insights about how people are feeling. But my colleagues who are going out in the field, having all those discussions, they need to be armed with the right materials. And so our playbook for this year is, what are some of the things that are most on people's minds right now? And as an example, perhaps in the first quarter, we had a campaign that was dedicated to helping people understand what financial advisors and professional investors are thinking about crypto right now. So we do an annual survey that gets at how people are thinking about the space, what some of the trends are there. And so we delivered that. It's a really interesting piece to kind of generate some discussions. Oh, I didn't know that financial advisors personally had this level of investment in crypto. And this is the thing that people are most concerned about this year. So I'd say some of that, which is having the conversations, equipping our team with things like, white papers, 2-pagers, select videos, that sort of thing, that helps them there. We've also invested a fair amount this year in building out some tools for advisors to access through our website. So, we have a brand new platform that gives people kind of exclusive access to some tools that let them simulate things and see, okay, how would my portfolio behave if I had a 1% or a 2% allocation to Bitcoin, or what's the correlation of this particular crypto asset to this particular benchmark. So just making those more available, inviting financial advisors, institutions to really experiment with these things and kind of kick the tires on their own. And then in terms of some other things, events, we see events as an important kind of offline channel that, again, getting people in a room in person. Well, actually, so both webinars have been a really huge way for us to educate on scale, and we found that to be really, really helpful in generating new questions and sharing kind of what we're seeing in the markets, and also in-person events that involve several people at Bitwise answering questions, making some presentations on what's going on. And then I'd say to a lesser extent this year than last year, where it was a huge area of emphasis, but we've invested in some paid media across digital channels, and yeah, so that it's a wide variety of touch points, but kind of the mental model we have is that the way that trust is built is by kind of continuing to just show up and letting people know that we're here, that here are some interesting insights that may be of value to you. And eventually, when people have that kind of natural curiosity that comes up, they've had a couple of touch points, maybe across a few different things, then kind of deeper conversations can happen. So yeah, that was my long-winded answer.
I have a question related to failure in marketing. So whether this is at Bitwise or across your career, what is a marketing fail you feel comfortable sharing, and what were some of the lessons you learned through that experience?
Yeah, I love this question. I would say there are two examples I can think of, and they both kind of center around the same cause, and that is not thinking about distribution before content is developed. And I can give two examples. One of them is it was from a prior firm, and in this case there was a project where our goal was to go and to film some kind of in-person research that we were doing at farms in the Midwest. It was a commodities research piece. And it was fascinating. Got to meet these farmers who had this incredibly sophisticated technology. They had these great insights. It was visually stunning. And it wasn't like a huge investment, but it also wasn't like no investment at all in terms of cost. And in the end, we produced this video that I was proud of. It was a really interesting video. It had some cool insights that really attested to what we were doing. But I had not taken the time ahead of that to alert people internally that we were doing this, and to think through, once we had this, what were the channels that we were going to use to disseminate this? What was the proper timing? And so getting kind of like internal buy-in, and also really thinking through how to best package this. And so what ended up happening is the piece was ready, but the response internally was somewhat tepid, because it was like, I hadn't built consensus as to what we were going to do with this before we did it. And so as a result, it was released. It was, kind of like a one-off email, and that was the end of it. And I always looked at that as a big missed opportunity, that you can really devote the time and effort to creating a particular piece of content, and it can even answer good questions and reflect well in your brand. But if you haven't been really thoughtful about what you're going to do with that, ideally, and what success looks like, then it can be a wasted effort. And maybe the second example I would give is, just personally, I did a side project a couple of years ago where I did a business writing course, and I put like hundreds of hours of work into this. I filmed the thing. I was really excited about it. And in retrospect, it's funny. I had this like sense in my mind that, what, this is just going to be so brilliant that it'll just sell itself. And, maybe I'll post it to a couple of friends, and then it'll just spread like wildfire. And I didn't put any thought into the wisdom of putting paid dollars behind it, of kind of leveraging a network, and being, a little bit more direct about asking people and I could have done all that. And so in the end, it didn't amount to anything other than something that was like a pet project that I could look back on. So I think both of those examples for me suggest that you have to really define how is this going to be distributed, and what does success look like before you actually develop the content for it.
And I have two last questions, and one of them was going to be, how do you measure success in marketing?
Yeah, this is a great question. It's a hard question, because I think I'm kind of of two camps, or there's two types of metrics. There's the hard data that you can look at, and to that extent, Bitwise is, I think, like a lot of other firms, in that we look at a wide swath. So things like, how many people are coming to your website, who's downloading materials, who's subscribing, when you send out emails, what sort of engagement are you seeing on them? When you have videos, what is the engagement level like? When it comes to webinars, not only how many people are attending, but how many people who attend are asking questions, and are there any kind of qualified leads that are possible from any of these activities? So those are all metrics that the marketing team spends a lot of time thinking about and gathering. But I think a second part of that is something that has become more apparent to me. Our sales colleagues have begun talking more about some of the stories behind their successes, and in doing that, you'll pick up on some nuances that would not be easily trackable in a metric, but you'll see that, okay, there was an initial call, and the reason for the call was we had maybe a new piece of research that was of interest and valuable, and the salesperson said, hey, just thought you might be interested in this, given some of the conversations we've had. And then that person, maybe 3 months down the line, called and had a question about this. And so then there was another marketing material we used for that. And then they went to an event, and then, it was the fourth contact or the sixth contact that then they made a modest investment. And it's those stories that I think provide a lot of the validation that often it's not any one thing that is kind of like the silver bullet. It's a variety of touch points that are all cohesive. They're all carrying a similar message and carrying the value of the Bitwise, promise. But like, here's how they all work together. So I found that kind of data gathering, even though it's not very easily quantifiable, to be really helpful for our team when we're, evaluating how to go about things.
I totally resonate with that. And I was just having this thought this morning of how do I create more serendipity in my life? In my world, it's more of, clients coming on as agency. And I realized, me going to the pickleball court has actually led to some really interesting conversations. Who know if they'll, become clients or what will happen, but it's, I can't necessarily measure the effectiveness of me playing pickleball and having a good game with a random partner. And he, worked at a major golf company in San Diego.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. That in many cases, if you relationships are formed holistically, and that they don't always have this kind of direct progression. It's
Right.
I think of some of the companies or the brands that I trust, and often it's like you said, it's serendipitous encounters. It's a company that maybe has been doing something for a long time and I haven't been paying attention to, and I just kind of happen upon something that they did on this particular subject, or I run into one of their representatives at some conference and I'm just kind of intrigued by this. Just seems like an interesting person, and then I want to learn more. So yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. That marketing is in some way there's mystery to what we do, and our job is to show up and to be authentic and to act it with goodwill, and then a lot of the results come from that.
So the last question today is, what is the best purchase you've made for under $100, either personally or professionally, in the last 6 months, and why?
So I love this question as well. This is going to sound like I need to get out more, but one of my favorite purchases, it was actually under $10, but it is the first thing that comes to mind. So my wife and I, my kids, we all love to cook, and so there's a store nearby that has some cool kitchen gadgets and whatnot. And I went there because we're really big into maple syrup. We've got a couple of maple trees on our near our house, and so we've tapped it and made our own maple syrup. So I was going for that purpose, to grab some supplies related to that. And while I was there, at the checkout, it's this family-owned company. The owner says to me, kind of wide-eyed, he goes, "You gotta have this." He says, "This is the most incredible thing I've ever seen." It was basically like a dishcloth. It was about this big, and it was made of this very, very coarse fiber. And he said, "If you hand wash dishes with this thing," he's like, "it is as strong as steel wool, but it won't harm anything." He's like, "I'm telling you, this is the most amazing purchase we've had." And I was like, "All right, well, for $5.99 or whatever it was, I'm happy to give it a try." And I don't know what it is, when I'm kind of sitting there at the end of the day, just kind of going through the ritual of washing dishes. This thing cuts through grease and all our dishes like it's nothing. And for me, one of the things I really love about that story, though, is it is such a good representation of what good marketing is. That he was really sincere, and he was vouching for something that was of value to him, and he said it kind of serendipitously. I mean, he may have been saying that to a lot of people, but it came from a place of candor and sincerity. And I was like, yeah, you know what, maybe I'll try. And so I bought it. And so now I've mentioned it to other people, and I need to get the actual name of what the product is. But anyways, that was my most memorable purchase over the last 6 months. And like I said, more evidence that I probably need to get out more.
Well, Ricky, to round us off today, can you share a website for Bitwise, ways to follow up with you if someone is inspired by this organization, wants to learn more about you or your organization?
Yes, absolutely. So if you want to learn more about Bitwise, go to bitwiseinvestments.com. And there's a lot of cool resources there. We recently started a new Crypto 101 library. So for people that kind of want an overview that's really clear, really accessible, a lot of resources there, and some other tools that you can play around with. And if anyone wants to reach out to me personally, I would love to hear from you. My email is ricky@bitwiseinvestments.com. So would love to trade war stories or answer any questions.
Perfect, Ricky. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much, Andrew. It was a pleasure.